so much for this opportunity. Let's start looking at sort of the international market. Can we look at the Australian and New Zealand health job market? What do you see as the major drivers and challenges ahead?
It's great to be here. Thank you for asking me for the interview. I think one thing we need to bear in mind with the Australian New Zealand market, it is part of a truly global market in healthcare. And in the same way, I think increasingly that doctors and nurses and other professionals will be travelling around the world. You know, it's quite a well-trod path to go to Europe or to the States. That increasingly that's becoming the same thing for leaders in healthcare.
With those changes in the marketplace, Geraint, what are the consequences in terms of recruiting executives for the future?
Well, I think the important thing is, certainly something that I've become very much aware of in New Zealand, I think it's equally true in Australia, is one of the things that we don't do well here is talent management. It's almost as if we think there is an endless pot of people we could put into posts, just move around, suddenly they appear. And if they don't, what we can do is import a few more. There's a certain irony in my own accent, for example. However, I think the challenge that we're facing in terms of healthcare and healthcare leadership now in somewhere like Australasia is so multi-layered and so complex that I think what we need to be doing is making sure that we manage our talent much more effectively and manage the careers of our leaders much more effectively. It's not just the case that I think you'll have leaders coming in who come in as leaders, they come as managers, and that's just what they do. Our leaders will be coming from our professions, our leaders will be coming from our community, from our groups of patients in the future in terms of moulding and shaping healthcare. We need a plan to develop those. It isn't just about where do you go to headhunt the next chief executive.
Bearing that in mind, and you've mentioned that the multi-layered and the complex management of talent, what are the potential skill gaps that we're facing then in terms of healthcare leaders of the future?
I think we need to first of all define what we want from our healthcare leaders. And as I mentioned before, I think the task now is becoming a lot more complex. You don't just want to have people who are very competent, technically competent at running institutions. Although you will continue to need to have those kind of skills, that's not the totality of the leadership challenge that we've got. We're now looking at people who are going to be able to to manage complex systems across institutions, right across the health sector, but for that matter, across many sectors. Because the reality is that the things that affect demand for health are often outside of the control of a hospital or a broader health system. We need to learn to work multi-sectorally. So we need people who are going to be able to do that, not just about managing a silo of an institution, but people who can manage systems, complex systems. The other things that we need to be looking at is creating leaders who know how to create opportunities and then get people to fill them and get followers who are themselves leaders to come in and make those changes happen. So it's much more a sense of how do you empower people, how do you build new partnerships, and how do you give people the space to thrive and develop themselves? One thing I often talk about is in the future, given the trend in things like long-term conditions, which will be such a strong gravitational pull on where we're going with healthcare in the future, is that the patient will become as much the healthcare worker of the future. They will become as much the leader of their own health as a doctor or a nurse. These people have a condition which they will manage for 30, 40, 50 years. It's no longer the emphasis on an episode where you go and see a technician and that sorts you out. This is about an ongoing relationship, an ongoing leadership relationship. And the patient themselves will have as much determinant of their own healthcare outcome than anything a technician or a clinician can do. They will themselves be leaders of the future. How do we get them engaged? So it's a question of how do you build bridges, coalitions and engagement and opportunities. It's no longer just about running a business or running an institution.